Andrei Chikatilo is a serial killer who confessed that he committed his murders to find peace rather than sexual satisfaction. And although Chikatilo, who has 53 confirmed victims, committed his first murder in 1978, he was only caught 22 years later due to his intelligence and inadequate techniques of the time. Andrei Chikatilo, also known as the Butcher of Rostov, is a serial killer responsible for the death of dozens of people and children, but we will, of course, talk about the detailed answers and examine the serial killer in detail for those who want to hear more about Chikatilo. Chikatilo had a difficult childhood and became withdrawn during his teenage years when he realized that he had impotence problems, even committing suicide in the following years afterwards. He decided to move on with his life and started to lead a life like normal people. He got married and had children, but behind the known Chikatilo, there was a dark and evil Chikatilo. Below, you will learn the life story of the famous Russian serial killer and realize that Andrei Chikatilo was much more frightening than the photo you see above. On October 19, 1936, Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was born in Ukraine, and the Soviet Union, under the rule of Joseph Stalin, was in complete chaos at that time. There was a famine due to the policies pursued in the country, and rumor has it that people were killing and eating each other to avoid. Some sources even say that Andrei's older brother Stefan was kidnapped and eaten. Chikatilo, who spent the first years of his life in such a period, also often wet the bed and was scolded and beaten by his mother. His father joined the Soviet army when he was only 5 years old and was soon captured. In 1943, he had a sister, but because his father had joined the army in 1941, it was thought that his mother had been raped by a German soldier. Despite the difficulties he witnessed as a child, Chikatilo excelled in school and realized that he was impotent during adolescence. Andrei, who became withdrawn, had a few relationships during his adolescence, but none of them lasted long because of his impotence. As the years progressed in this way, Chikatilo also came to the conclusion that he could not be accepted to the university he wanted, despite keeping his grades, because his father had been captured years before and was considered a traitor. In 1973, Andrei sexually harassed a 15-year-old female student and soon after assaulted another female student. Chikatilo was expelled from the school following complaints by the students, and later started working in a Rostov-based factory. Chikatilo traveled frequently for his job, but his private life was going quite well. Andrei committed his first murder on December 22, 1978, having deceived a 9-year-old girl, Yelena Zakotnova, by telling her he would give her candy. Andrei took her to a small house he had secretly bought for prostitutes. There he tried to rape her, but failed because he had erectile dysfunction, and when she tried to escape, Chikatilo, enraged, stabbed her 3 times in the stomach and had an orgasm after killing her. And he did the same in his subsequent murders. 3 years later, Andrei asked 17-year-old Larisa Kachenko, who was waiting at a bus stop, to drink vodka and took her to a wooded area in the woods near the Don River. The serial killer made Larisa lie on the ground and tore off her clothes, attempted to rescue her, but was unable to have sexual intercourse. Due to information problems, enraged, Chikatilo struck her repeatedly with a stick, bit her nipples with his teeth, and suffocated her with mud he filled his mouth with. His next victim 9 months later was 13-year-old Yubal Biryuk. After stabbing her 52 times, the murderer tried to curb his urge to kill and committed 5 more murders between July and September 1982. Andrei Chikatilo, who lured children with candy and chewing gum, and older children with offers of alcohol, a house, and money, usually killed his victims in forest areas. The killer, who mostly used knives, also beat or strangled some of his victims. He made no effort to hide the bodies. On December 11, 1982, Chikatilo lured a 10-year-old girl he met on a bus and took her to a secluded area, where he literally riddled his victim, Olga Stalmachanok, to death. On October 30, 1983, the body of a prostitute, Vera Shekin, was found in a state remarkably similar to that of the previous victims, but the killer's identity was still unknown. In January and February 1984, the killer brutally murdered 2 more women and gouged out their eyes. Chikatilo committed many more murders in the following months, and his victims were both women, men, and children in the same year. The serial killer was fired from his job for stealing, but in August he found a job as a civil servant in Rostov. On September 13, 1984, Chikatilo was caught trying to deceive women at a bus stop in Rostov, and despite all suspicions, he was sentenced to only 3 months in prison. This was for theft at his previous workplace, a killer whose blood type was misdiagnosed due to the inadequate technology of the time. Committed 21 more murders after his release, and finally, on November 6, 1990, after committing one of his last murders, Chikatilo took the step that would lead to his future capture. And what was that? Chikatilo emerged suspiciously from a wooded area near Donlishaw Station and attracted the attention of the officer on duty there, because he had grass and soil stains on him. He also had a red spot on his cheek that looked like a drop of blood. The police stopped him and questioned him, but had no reason to arrest Chikatilo and released him on November 13th. After the body of the 22-year-old woman Chikatilo had killed on November 6th was found, security forces began investigating the area, and the name Andrei Chikatilo stood out in the report prepared by the surveillance officer. Total victims, 54. The screams, blood, and pain of the victims gave me relaxation and pleasure. The sadistic man who chewed the uterus of his female victims and the testicles of his male victims also tasted their blood. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe and like.